Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to show you my beginner build for the Magicka Necromancer for the Ascending Tides DLC patch. As a part of the beginner setup series, I'll be focusing on a starting rotation and gear that are all easily accessible. For the sake of this theme and to be as new player friendly as possible, I'll be avoiding mythics, arena weapons, trial, or dungeon gear. Furthermore, the rotation for many classes will be simplified. This build is capable of pulling over 78k on the parts dummy and is viable for most starting content. The build specializes in normal group content such as trials, vet dungeons, and group arenas. This build works great in Overland but is not specifically designed for it. Furthermore, I'll be going over some ideas and tips to further progress yourself into mid and end game. Although hybrid builds are some of the strongest builds right now, I'll be focusing on a more traditional setup that either focuses on Magicka or stamina. So with that being said, starting off in the character sheet, I have 64 points into Magicka and I'm running the Thief Mundus. For the race, I am a high elf. Other alternatives include dark elf, Khajiit, and maybe even Brennan would be fine. For consumables, we're going to be using Clockwork Citrus Fillet for any hard content. A cheaper and almost just as good alternative will be Witch Mother's Potent Brew, and if you're parsing or just need more sustain but can sacrifice the health, Ghastly Eyeball is always the go-to. Moving on to potions. So for potions, we're just going to be running standard Essence of Spell Power. Essence of Spell Power is important in that it gives access to 3 major buffs that are important for Magicka DPS. These include Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, and Major Intellect. Please keep in mind that these potions do cost a bit to make and or buy, so make sure you have 3 points in medicinal use located from the alchemy skill line to make sure you benefit from the potions for the full duration. So for CP for the blue tree, we're going to be running Biting Aura, Fighting Finesse, Master at Arms, and Backstabber. For the red tree, we're going to be running Boundless Vitality, Fortified, Rejuvenation, and Siphoning Spells. Beginner series, I decided to change the gear set a little bit. We're going to be running Julianos 5-piece with Hunning's 5-piece and 2-piece Night Mother. So breaking it down, we're going to start off with 2 daggers of Julianos. Main hand is Nirnhoned and offhand is charged. If you don't have access to Nirnhoned, you can just make that either charged or precise. Doesn't make too big of a difference. Make sure you have Nirnhoned in the main hand slot and poison damage enchant. Offhand is going to be charged with a flame damage enchant. On the back bar, we're running an Inferno Staff of Julianos infused with an increased weapon and spell damage enchant. For the head and shoulders, we're going to be running 2 pieces of Night Mother, both in medium with Max Mag traded in Divines. And for the body, we have 5 pieces of Hunning's Rage, all crafted in light with Max Mag glyphs traded in Divines. And for jewelry, we're going to be running 3 pieces of Julianos jewelry, all with Bloodthirsty, all pieces of jewelry with spell damage glyphs. So for skills, we're going to be running Stalking Blastbones, Unnerving Boneyard, Degeneration, Scalding Rune, Detonating Siphon, Flawless Dawnbreaker, Mystic Orb, Unstable Wall of Fire, Inner Light, Skeletal Arcanist, Barbed Trap, and Shooting Star. So for the rotation, we're just going to be revolving it around our Stalking Blastbones. So what I mean by that is we're going to use our Stalking Blastbones and then 2 skills after it. So for the rotation, we're going to go Stalking Blastbones, Unnerving Boneyard, Degeneration, Stalking Blastbones, Scalding Rune, Detonating Siphon, Stalking Blastbones, Mystic Orb, Unstable Wall of Fire, Stalking Blastbones, Skeletal Arcanist, and Barbed Trap. Whenever your Shooting Star is ready, just cast that whenever. And when your Shooting Star is ready, just cast it whenever. In terms of progression, I definitely work on replacing Hunnings for Mother Sorrow as my first step. Mother Sorrow is a really good set and it's super easy to get considering it drops from Dishon. For a basic beginner setup, it would be Mother Sorrow and Julianos paired with a monster set. For this particular setup, I'd recommend either Stormfist or Maul the Inferno as the monster helms because Tempest Island and Banish Cell 2 on Vet isn't too difficult and the sets are very strong. Next, you have the choice of replacing your Mother Sorrow and Julianos. From here is moving towards mid to end game. Basai from the Trial Rockgrove is a really strong set, but does require running Rockgrove, which is a trial. Running it on normal is very easy and you should work on getting it if possible. I'd also like to point out that Reliquant on body is also becoming popular and it's perfect for hybrid builds. Regardless of which set you choose, you need to choose another set to pair it with. I like to call these front bar sets. These can be Kinra, Pillar of Nirn, Zogvin, and Advancing Yokeda. Please note that most of these sets are in medium, so you'd have to run it on weapon and jewelry. Unless you're doing a hybrid setup, then you can run it on the body, but I definitely recommend running these, especially for traditional setup, on your jewelry and weapons. From this list, I think Kinnera is the best option, granted you're able to keep the stacks. Kinnera comes from the dungeon Black Drake Villa, Pillar of Nirn comes from Falkreath Hold, Advancing Yokeda comes from Hellraw Citadel, The Trial, and Zovgan comes from Frostvault. I'd also like to mention that Zovgan is unique in that it allows us to run a different skill instead of trap, freeing up a bar slot. Next is the Mythic route and Maelstrom Arena weapon. For Maelstrom Arena weapon, getting an Inferno staff on the back bar is probably the best choice, unless, as I said earlier, you're going for a hybrid build. Then in that case, Great Sword would probably work better. Mythics is kind of a pain to get, but they are some of the strongest items in the game. If you are going to be running a mythic, I'd go for a one-piece slime crawl monster helm paired with Harpooner's Waiting Kilt as the mythic. Harpooner's is viable for most content and is best in slot for that content. A good alternative will always be Death Dealer's Fate, and I also like to include that if you're doing solo content, Ring of the Pale Order is such a lifesaver. For monster helms, if you want to skip the mythic route, we have a few options, but Stormfist, Kjarnar, and Maul Inferno are my personal picks, and I think that wraps it up. So closing thoughts per usual. First off, if you don't like daggers, you can always swap to an Inferno staff. Daggers do pull ahead in DPS, but you do sacrifice the range, so they both have their pros and cons. So the reason why the bars are set up the way they are is I wanted to make bar swaps less frequent because you're already bar swapping when you're using Blast Bones. So I figured that the first two skills and the two skills that follow should be on the front bar, and then the last four skills after Blast Bones should be on the back bar. We're just running Inner Light on the back bar because it's a flex spot. You can include anything you want, but Necros have access to some really cool skills like Spirit Mender and whatnot, so that's something you might want to think about. As far as ultimate is concerned, I have Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front bar just for the passive, and Shooting Star on the back bar as my actual ultimate. But in actual content, you should consider running Colossus, especially if you don't have a source of major vulnerability. And one last thing, we're using Unnerving Boneyard because it's a really good skill for actual content, whereas Avid with the synergy would probably give you more DPS. But timing the synergies on top of getting your shard synergy from the trial dummy can be kind of complicated, and I didn't want to get into that. That wraps up the build explanation section of this portion. As always, thank you for watching my video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Come join our Discord, by the way. Link is in the description. As a reminder, if this video helped in any way, please help the channel grow by subscribing. And if you like the piggies, like the video, feel free to stick around for an attached parse. If not, have a good day and thank you again.